West Virginia, the small town of Green Bank in Appalachia.
What you're seeing behind me is a very large telescope, 100 meters in diameter, but instead of picking up the light as normal telescopes do, it picks up the radio waves that are coming from the universe, from objects out there as close as the planets, but as far as actually the Big Bang.
The telescope discovered the black hole in our own galaxy, the Milky Way. In the visitor center, you can roll your coins into a funnel which resembles a black hole. Your coins, indeed, disappear irretrievably.
If there was a civilization like ours on a nearby planet, we could almost certainly pick up some of their television stations, perhaps, some of their radar, who knows what. This collecting area is several acres in size, and it can pick up enormous signals from an enormous distance, but they've traveled so far that they are so faint that typically they contain a lot less energy than the energy of a falling snowflake settling on the ground. The enemy of radio astronomy is the natural radio signals that we make on Earth, either deliberately or accidentally. Things like microwave ovens can emit radiation which can blind us to the signals that are coming from the stars. Cell phones are billions of times stronger than the faint signals we're looking for. Satellites, they beam straight down on us.
Music stations.
Music stations, yes. Playing Elvis. We've managed to keep cell phone transmissions out. Your smartphones are dumb here. They just do not work. We really try to keep wireless transmissions of any kind suppressed within about 10 miles of the observatory. For a long time, we had a fleet of checker diesels, and these are the standard New York City cabs. And they're very precious to us because they were the perfect vehicle for radio astronomers. These do not have spark plugs. They don't make noise.
In the forest near the telescope, we met a modern-day hermit.
So see, I've finally gone high tech. I've got a faucet installed. It really makes a difference, I have to say. I became very ill from radiation sickness in 1996, and I lost 50 pounds. I nearly died 3 times, and I became reactive to all the wireless radiation signals when all the cell phones went up. They went up in massive numbers in 1996, and I tried to do all kind of treatment. I moved. I lost my career. I was working as an architect in Honolulu. I had to be separated from my family and children. And finally I heard about this in 2011. And as soon as I heard there was a place with no cell towers, I was here in 48 hours. Sometimes if I have really bad reactions to radiation, I actually sleep on the ground. I feel better on the ground. And there may be a science to this. They say that the ground emits 7.83 hertz, and it's the natural rhythm for animals and humans. I also sleep in my car, which I instinctively did in the beginning, and I later learned that it acts like a partial Faraday cage. The metal keeps out a lot of the radiation.
This place in Green Bank is wonderful. It's not perfect, but I can go outside. I can see the trees. I can see the sky. I can see the stars. When I lived in the Faraday cage, I had to live in a box, and I only left the box when I wanted to go to the bathroom or to use the shower. Otherwise, I stayed in that box day and night.
In a cage?
In a Faraday cage.
How long?
A couple of years. Several years. I had a mattress, and I didn't have a place to stand up. I had to stay on the bed the entire time. My husband went grocery shopping. He cooked the food. He would bring and serve me the food. We'd open the door. He'd hand me the plate, and I'd eat inside the Faraday cage.
I've heard it also called as a super sense, that we just have this ability to, for whatever reason, feel these frequencies. It's a very legitimate illness, but at this point, I don't consider it a gift. I would give anything to give it back.
You're the refugee now.
Yes, I don't know what to call myself. This is brand new. And I just want people to know that this type of illness, and doctors, I really want them to hear that this is a legitimate illness. And it affects our lives tremendously. You have no idea. When you go home today after this interview, you have the luxury of going home to your familiar surroundings. You have that luxury to go back to your families. I haven't had that in 4.5 years. I haven't had any stability. And I just have to impress upon you how serious this is for those of us that are suffering. And I'm extremely grateful that there is a location here where I am no longer in pain, or whatever type of irreparable harm may be being done to my body will be either suspended or temporarily arrested.
There's a lot more community interaction in a place like this, I think, because of the absence of the cellular technology and also because of the isolation of a rural community in such a beautiful place like this. And yes, I do play the fiddle and the banjo at night.
When she is mad, going up the creek, going in a run, going up the creek, have a little fun, raise my britches leg to my knees, wait on the creek when I
The state of Washington across the continent. In an idyllic forest not far from Seattle, a rehab center for internet addiction named Restart was established.
Well, there are so many of these severe cases. For instance, in South Korea, there was the case of a couple that had a young baby, and they were very much addicted to a game that they went to play while neglecting their child at home. And this baby eventually starved to death, and they went to jail for this. But it is because they were hooked on a game, and ironically, it was a game in which they were taking care of and nurturing in the game a young girl. But as they were doing that, their own child was starving to death. Shortly after we opened Restart, we got a call from a stepmom. Her stepson was living with his grandmother and had just had his leg amputated because he developed a thrombosis in his leg from lack of movement. So we know of cases, many cases happening in Korea and China of people who are dying at the computer because they're playing for 40, 50, 60 hours at a time and completely neglecting their body's physical needs.
It is not uncommon that in South Korea teenage video gamers put on diapers. This way they avoid losing points by going to the bathroom.
Tom, you do not need any further introduction. This was great.
My lowest point came at the beginning of this year. New Year's Eve, I had lost a job. I was losing my girlfriend. My family, my relations were very strained, and I tried to drink myself to death.
Suicide.
I was playing video games 16 hours a day, often drunk. I watched porn a lot, and I just had given up. I had no future. I had no will to live. I was just waiting for the timer to run out.
I was in my spring quarter in college, and I was doing nothing except sleeping about 6 hours a day and playing video games and absolutely not attending any of my classes, not doing any of my work, and lying to my parents about my progress. So it was a lot of lying, manipulation, isolation especially, which are all common things for addicts, but mine were pretty much sleep and, interact with my addiction.
Did you adopt certain characters that became almost like you?
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that because I'm still in the phase where thinking too deeply about my own intricacies could set me off, could really start that cravings and start those withdrawal symptoms again.
I wanted very much to discuss fictional characters with Chloe, like the malevolent druid dwarf, or whoever these figures are, but I had to desist.
The real danger to gaming is when when I stopped being present in the real world more often than I was in the game world. If you get to the point where you're thinking about the game more than you're thinking about real life, what you're going to do for food, what you're going to do the next day or two, you're not thinking about a relationship or a job or a career. If you're thinking about the game, it's a problem, because eventually it'll get in the way of everything real.